today's society, we have failed to value the language skills. Language skills are really important in today's society. They open avenues for communication, exploration across cultures, and they allow to instill the communication skills that we need in order to survive in today's society. The American public system has failed to establish a joint curriculum that allows a second language to be introduced into the elementary school. And it is important for us to understand what languages could do in order to improve our skills and how they can affect the children's abilities. In order to understand to a further extent, we'll be discussing the importance of introducing a language curriculum to the already established curriculum for the K6 teachings. Schooling at an early age, especially for languages, is very important. According to an article, Parents Push for Foreign Language Classes, most public schools do not offer languages such as Spanish or French or other languages because there is not a lot of teachers that come and teach those classes. Noam Chomsky, one of the most prominent linguists of the 20th century, pointed out that languages can be understood and learned at a faster rate during the critical period, as he described in his thesis. According to Noam Chomsky, he argued that children have the ability to learn languages faster because as humans we are pre-programmed with knowledge with previous knowledge in order to understand languages at a further extent. He also argued that the universal grammar allows us to learn languages very fast. So it is important for us to allow children to learn languages during that critical period, which is between birth and approximately 12 years. According to the National Network for Early Language, most kids don't have access to those languages, and by taking out those tools we are prohibiting them to learn more about the cultures and the communication skills that they require in order to be successful in life. Learning languages through school is very important, especially in the K6 curriculum. According to the Secretary of Education, Warren Duncan, in 2010, he said that Americans need to speak, read, and understand languages, especially in today's society. He also pointed out that 18% of Americans have declared a second language in their communications, whereas in Europe, 56% of Europeans have learned languages throughout their life and have been able to preserve those languages and use them in daily communication. Language communication is very important in today's society. In order to emphasize this, we need to make a difference. The American public system needs to be changed, and it needs to have the ability to allow children to learn languages, especially during the critical period as Chomsky described. Languages. I'm sorry. Thank you.
I'm okay, I got it. All right, I like the idea of the opening phrase in your presentation, but you need to have it practice a little bit so it sounds like you've got it smooth and you know where you're going and you sound a little bit more confident. I had difficulty picking out what your exact proposition was. You've got 2 or 3 sentences that all talk about the importance of language, but none of them are very clear declarative sentences, and there's no highlighting of the proposition. There's no specific statement that says, so the proposition here is, or the major claim that I'm going to argue for is. And so as a consequence, I'm having to search for it, and that's a little awkward in the context in which we're making these presentations. The preview of the supporting material basically collects all of the information into one category and says that it's important. So I know that you're going to be talking about the importance of language, but that doesn't distinguish it and separate how those ideas are going to build, and it'll make it hard as the listener is trying to pay attention to pick out distinct claims, and I think you need to be a little bit sharper about that. I also think that you need to give us a little bit more background on what's controversial about this so that we know why it is that you have to advance this particular claim. I think you explained some of the controversy in the body of the speech, but you need to have stronger explanations at the beginning so that people know where it is we're going during the presentation. You did signpost the first point as you got to it, so I thought that was pretty distinct. Unfortunately, after that, I didn't really hear any distinguishing points, and it sounds to me like you kind of bailed out on your third point. I think that that also hurts your credibility a little bit, that you need to know what my argument is. And I know that you're trying not to be over-dependent on notes. You're trying to have the information close to being memorized. I think that's a great effort on your part, but this is one of the problems about trying to rely on just your memory. Trying to remember all the information that you had is tough. If you practice it 1,000 times, maybe you would get it right, but that's a lot of practice that you'd have to be doing there. On your supporting information, I thought that you had some vague references to some examples. There was actually one good piece of statistical information that you used to compare the United States to Europe in terms of the amount of foreign language or second language speakers that we have in comparison to Europe. It would be nice if you could show, for instance, that there is some quantifiable advantage to having that second language. Are their business relationships more successful? Is there an economic way that we can see and measure this sort of thing? Or is it just, well, they've got more and we have less, so therefore we're inadequate in comparison? Does that really matter? And I think you need to make the argument that it does matter. You had good testimony information about the importance of early learning language, but I think because your argument is not as clear at the beginning, it's not. I saw your outline and we talked a little bit about it, so I know what your argument is. I'm not sure everybody else would know that your argument is really about the importance of having early language learning in our schools, that's something that would work to improve U.S. standing in the world or ability to function effectively, and that's really what your claim is. So as a consequence, it's a little unclear why we're getting this information. Well, kids learn early, that's nice. What about that? The argument is we don't have programs for the kids to learn early now, and we need those kinds of programs. You also had some testimony from some other authorities that you cited pretty effectively, and I thought that was fine. Like I said, it seemed a little premature in the way you finished off. I know that you have another idea or something that you wanted to get to, but you just struggled trying to get it. And I have not precluded you from using notes. I want you to use the minimal amount of notes. I think you probably needed to have an outline in front of you that would help you there. The presentation could be a little bit more effective. Like I said, it seems like it needs to be polished at the beginning of the speech especially. Once you got going, I thought you did pretty well on most of those things, but you need a lot more structure in the presentation also. So you've got some good evidence. You need to make the claims clearer, and probably a little practice there would help. All right, thank you for starting us off. It's always tough.